These are the real and raw stories of business owners who have ventured off on their own and into the unknown. I'm Reagan Avon, and this is the In Your Business podcast. All right, well, Erika, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Reagan. Excited to be here.
I know.
This is
so
excited. Awesome. It's a great studio. It's awesome. It's nice to see you
in person.
You're probably the first real person that I have seen that doesn't work at a grocery store in a really long time.
I know. Some of my guests have been saying like, this is the reason I get to leave my house in like weeks.
Honestly, when I was driving on the expressway, I was like, I don't remember the last time I drove on the expressway.
I know.
It's been that long. Yeah.
It's a weird feeling of like semi-normalcy. It's like a nice comfort of just getting in the car and being like, I get to go somewhere.
I get to go somewhere. It's very exciting. I get to go somewhere. Yeah. So thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Well, cheers also.
Oh, definitely.
For your drink.
Cheers.
Oh. This is probably the most visibly beautiful drink that Derek has made so far.
These are real flowers. These are not fake. This is definitely beautiful. It's very refreshing. I love the concept. What's it? Something like Erika or a purple lavender or something or other. So I can't wait to see everything when it comes out because I will be definitely making this. I have a lot of friends who are going to be jealous.
Oh, yeah. Having a personalized drink is like such an
It is. Like the next thing is like a sandwich. And then I'll know I've really made it somewhere.
That's great. So I want to talk about the business you just launched, especially kind of right before COVID. So I want to talk about that business. So you recently launched E.P.I.C, Creative and Design. And real quick, what does E.P.I.C stand for? Because I know it's an acronym.
E.P.I.C is an acronym. It stands for Erika Pryor's in charge. That way people feel really clear about like what the leadership structure is and where the decisions happen and how they filter down. I figured I would just build that into the infrastructure of the business. So there's the E.P.I.C Creative and Design, which is the technology innovation studio, I'm calling it, or a creative tech innovation studio. And then there's the E.P.I.C Career Network. So
which you recently just launched.
Yes, that one I just launched. But really, like if I go back to COVID, I, was in job transition and trying to figure out like what I was going to do next, and decided like I definitely do not want to fill out a whole bunch of applications and go through that whole rigmarole. So let me just activate my network and put myself on like a 30-day networking journey, which I tell people it is an excellent way, an excellent campaign for you to say, I would meet with 30 people in 30 days.
Wow.
Really put it out there and see who wants to meet with you, but then also use that as kind of a jumping off point to meeting with other people. And so I ended up meeting with about 45 people.
Wow.
Yeah, in about 45 days. I didn't anticipate all the people would want to introduce me to.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So
do you
really
get
exciting.
fatigue from networking that much?
There were definitely weeks, like by Friday, I was like, oh my God, I cannot hear myself talk like anymore. Yeah, so I did get like, and I drank a lot of coffee.
You're wired for like a whole month straight.
Yeah, like by the time I hit 4:00, I'm like, all right, let's go, let's talk, let's do it.
Yeah, you're either wired or hammered because you're either getting drinks or coffee.
So that was great. And while I was doing that, I met with a lot of people in and around marketing, which is my background. And they were talking about this need for like higher level marketing strategy, and that they had been working with a lot of different vendors, and they didn't know if everybody was actually kind of working in unison and if everybody's sort of working towards the same goals, or even like what clarity around what the marketing team's goals were and how they related to business objectives. And I was like, well, that's great. Like, that's what I love. I love the strategy and the planning and like helping people do that. So I kind of looked around for like jobs like that, but I didn't really know what it was called. So I was like, I'll just just formulate a business and just do it myself for a little while, and then I'll probably come into something that's similar to it. And then COVID happened, and in March, like all of the contracts that I had, people were like, sorry, we're not hiring any outside vendors at this point. We've got to tighten our belt.
Which is crazy to me because COVID was probably one of the most critical times for marketing for a lot of organizations.
Absolutely. But, everybody just panicked and didn't know what to do. And marketing is sort of always the first pot that people rob when they're trying to tighten the belt, unfortunately. Marketing or human resources and salary. So I was like, okay, well, let me take a step back. I feel like I just figured out what I want to do with my life. Now I got to refigure that out. That seems unfair, but whatever. So like in the midst of that, people started reaching out to me and asking if I would like take a look at their resume or help them with their LinkedIn profile or something like that.
Because you have a really extensive background.
I
should have introduced you as Dr. Erika Pryor.
It is Dr. Erika Pryor.
Yes, because you have such an incredible, diverse background of skills.
Yeah, as we talked about, polymath. So one of those people that learns a lot of things, like masters things quickly, especially if they're like tangentially related, So people started asking me if I do career coaching, and I was like, I don't know, maybe I do career coaching. Sure. Do you think I could be a career coach for you? It's like, I was figured as a Black woman, like my, luck in life is that I'm good at telling people what to do. And they want to do what I tell them. So I was like, okay, well, I think this is a perfect match. And so kind of like started working fast and furious on launching this career network to really help people find and do their most authentic work. And in the midst of a pandemic, letting people have a space where they can get honest feedback. And some of that feedback maybe it's okay to not like accept just anything. Like it's okay to take your time and try and find the right fit. Like it's okay to like have some coaching and have somebody like guide you or help you make difficult decisions that you may not have made in the past. And so that's where that kind of came from as I was figuring out what's going to happen next. And then as I started working with clients on career needs, then all of a sudden they were like, well, hey, can you help me get a website together? Hey, can you help me on some personal branding? Someone said, hey, can you help me build out a podcast? And so those don't really fit in career network, but they fit really well with sort of creative technology studio, which really helps people figure out how to create tech or tech-enabled projects and bring them to life. So that's sort of how they all came together, but it's very exciting to like launch something in the midst of a pandemic and
I know
say like, is there a market need? Like what can I do here? What's my intervention? And then to just go for it. Even while people are telling you like, no, you should take a safe route. No, you should try and find something that's not as risky,
Yeah. I think you kind of hit on that perfectly on what kind of questions and feelings people are going through during the job hunting experience. Because honestly, even from personal experience, I was looking for a job that fit what I wanted to do, and I could not find one. It actually made me think, like, am I looking for something that doesn't exist? And I ended up just launching my own business. It's something I had thought about before, and I just came to the conclusion that I was kind of sick of trying to find something that culturally fit and that also allowed me to do what I really wanted to do.
Absolutely.
So, I wish I had someone like you during that time because, it's kind of a demoralizing process. You're really trying to figure out what your next step is. And especially now, it's more important, I would argue, than ever to be able to align culturally with organizations.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I think that is a driving force for a lot of people to step away from corporate America in the capacity as a full-time employee and think about a different kind of relationship with businesses and organizations that gives them a greater level of like flexibility and freedom over who they work with and how they work with them. And, COVID's done nothing but really exacerbate a lot of the racial and the gender and the equity disparities at every single level. And so it is not a surprise that statistically, like, Black women are the fastest growing demographic to launch their own businesses, because Black women have significantly fared less well than many other and most other groups when it comes around pay, when it comes around advancement, when it comes around sponsorship or mentorship. So, starting your own business is no more or no less, in fact, risky than having also a full-time job, right?
Sure.
I think a lot of people have been lulled out of this sense of comfort and security, thinking, well, I've got a full-time job. My company is very stable. They're on the Fortune 5,000.
Yeah.
Like, I can't get downsized. And not only were people downsized, but your position, your department, your team completely eliminated.
Totally. It is truly exposing the underlying risk that always exists, even in these kind of cushy jobs. I was random thought, but it totally aligns with what we're talking about. I was watching this video of Jim Carrey talking about that, and he was talking to his dad when he was younger about this idea of, you are just as much at risk of losing your job in these kind of corporation settings of stuff you don't even like to do.
Yep.
As you are starting your own thing, going out and pursuing your passion. And I think this transition stage of I always picture it as this like giant boat, this giant like yacht in the middle of the ocean. And there's this little tiny boat on the side of the giant yacht. And you're like jumping onto that boat and detaching yourself from the big boat. And you're out on your own. And it's a scary, scary, scary feeling. So I'm curious, like, where were you kind of mentally in making that jump? What kind of state were you in? Were you just trying to look for something new, or were you kind of trying to get out of something?
Oh, Lord. Okay. I shouldn't have filled out that survey.
Full disclosure in your business,
Exactly. No, that's a really interesting question, because this is the second time that I've been in business for myself, but from a very different perspective. But I have been fired 3 times in my career. In the last, I was like 12 years, in the last like 12 years, so it doesn't sound so bad.
Sounds like there's some juicy details.
we're not gonna go into all that, but the shortest job I ever held was like for 7 business days.
Wow.
And I was like, wait, hold on. Can't get fired after 7 business days, can you? But it was one of those instances where, again, like, you don't know what it's going to be like until you get in. You don't really understand the company culture. And this was a place where they did a really good job of like covering up the company culture. And it was sort of like an abused family where the children put on a really good show.
Oh, I've seen it. Yeah. It's so bizarre.
The children put on a really good show. And then when you get there, they're like, can we swear on here?
Oh, fuck yeah.
Okay. You get there and they're like, sorry, it's so fucked up. Like, I know I lied to you during the interview. And you're like, what the?
I know.
So I am thankful that I was fired so quickly and I didn't have to like go through the process of trying to figure that out for myself. But in each instance, it was a claim of necessity. I didn't have a whole lot of backup plans. I, had like some other income and had done like some other things on the side, but not very robustly. So in each instance, it was definitely like, I gotta make some money. I gotta support my family. I gotta pay my bills. So I can do this, and I'll figure it out. The first time around, I was much more of a contractor and freelancer, where I was really just focused on like getting the next project, like getting the next contract. Sometimes they would be rolling in simultaneously if they were clients. Sometimes I'd be, doing like a W-2 like contract position with a local agency, but I really had no idea about like forecasting revenue or thinking about multiple revenue lines, or imagining when the money comes in, when it goes out, and paying vendors, or I'm just figuring out a business model that doesn't rely on you as the sole capacity for it. I just hadn't thought about those things. It's very outside of like my lexicon of knowledge at the time. So 10 years fast forward, having worked with a lot of startups, been in like the VC capital space, and just like really dived into kind of business and economic development, able to come to it from a very different perspective. Like, this is a business. I need to create an infrastructure. I need to create systems. I need to understand what my business model is. I need to figure out like where I start and where I go and how I want to evaluate it and what the milestones look like and what my goals are, and just approached it really differently. But truly in both instances, it was, I have to make money because I've been like fired from my job or been let go from the position without any notice and without any sort of even, you know, like a discussion around like your performance improvement opportunities. It was just, you're no longer here. So that's why it's also been interesting with COVID before all of the racial things like erupted, because, you know, people of color were kind of talking about it and being like, well, we've been fired before, like we've been here before, like this is not new for many of us. My ex-husband, when we were together, he was released from his probably 3 jobs frequently again for, you know, great performance reviews, feedbacks that he was doing amazing, came up on like, okay, we're going to switch from contract to full-time, and told, no, we're not going to do that. Thanks for playing.
Wow.
So for a lot of people of color, it has not been as different because we've experienced the moment where you're released from your position without any like real notice, and you've got to figure out what happens next right away.
What does that look like in the current environment too for motivating that community to start their own businesses? Have you seen a lot of discussion around that topic?
Yeah, you know, I think in communities of color, just generally, like business ownership has always been and like that has always been your key to financial freedom.
Yeah.
So that's why you see a lot of people who, you know, are in real estate, and that's in a very accessible place. And so it's really interesting now because there are now a lot of things that are emerging to help and support business owners of color, both people who want to build something that's investable and backable, as well as people who want to build like Main Street businesses. So my hope is that those funds actually become accessible, and that they're not just like sitting there waiting and pretending like we can't find like valuable businesses to do this. But then there's also a lot of organizations like Black Girl Ventures and like, you know, Zora's House here in town and other organizations that are really helping women of color formulate the businesses. Mm-hmm. And I've been fortunate to work with some clients that are really steeped in that inclusive innovation work and are really like isolating the resources and also the gatekeepers for that. So right now, I think it's explosive, and we will only continue to see more women of color like moving into a business role, like moving into the roles of VC where they have greater control over where the money goes.
I know. That's really table stakes at this point.
It really is.
Yeah.
Like access to capital, number one reason, right? Everybody, but women of color, access to capital, like we're getting, you know, 0.2% or something ridiculously low of the pie. Women are already getting like a low shake of the pie. So, and then LGBTQ folks, whether your business is LGBTQ like focused or not, getting a small shake of the pie. So it's really exciting to see all of those avenues emerging, and I'm excited to see what happens next, to see like who's getting that funding actually.
Oh, for sure. I mean, there's been this, it's interesting to see this whole movement of VC and their whole conversation about location and dispersing funds by location. You know, all these statistics that are brought up, oh, you know, it's not just Silicon Valley anymore. We're starting to invest in places like the Midwest. Oh, that's great. But I can't believe we're still on this like location discussion about like VC distribution.
Land has no idea what to do. Like it's no wild idea. And I think they're feeling like this very, because, you know, VC land, it's so elitist, right?
No, it is inherently.
It's inherently elitist. It's a very closed network. You definitely have to know who to talk to, who you can then get an introduction to somebody who can then intro you, and then you can, you know, court them for a while where they would even consider you as someone to invest in. And then you have the whole rigmarole of knowing that women and people of color are subject to very different questions, documentation, terms, conditions. So I think right now VC land doesn't really know what to do because they've already been like infiltrated, by the John Henrys and Harlem Capitals of the world. And now they're like, oh gosh, they're exposing us. Like, what do we do now? And it is very white and male in VC land.
Oh, yeah. I mean, overwhelmingly so. But if you look at it, I mean, just like all the other systems in place, they're very much built on reputation and network. So if you look at just the percentage of venture capital investments and which firms are doing that and who they're doing that to, I mean, they're very concentrated.
Right.
It's not
a
like
very small circle.
Yeah.
And the folks that, I mean, it seems like, you're hearing all the time, so-and-so just raised $2 million and such-and-so just raised, well, that so-and-so and such has probably raised some of that same money from some of the same organizations because, as you said, they're part of the same networks. They're being introduced to the same people. So, and then also the other thing I think to evaluate around VC is to look like how big are those funds? Some people can come out with, 3.5 million multi-million-dollar fund, and some people are coming out with very, very small funds. Frequently, your of color and your women-focused funds are very, very small.
That's right.
They've been able to raise a nominal enough to say that they are a fund.
Yeah.
But not in the kinds of numbers that we typically see for some of the most successful and aggressive funds that are out there and like really doing the investment work.
Well, look at the network they've established with their limited partners.
Right, exactly.
The people that are giving them those funds.
Which is why Dawn Dixon is such like an interesting case.
I know.
Because she's really sort of been doing very exciting work around just democratizing the ability for people to become investors and to actually have access to what that network is. So she does a lot of work of bringing her, previous to COVID, like bringing her investors together and being like, okay, we're widening the network, we're widening the circle. Here are some of the other people that are out there that you may not be talking to. So I appreciate her for really trying to blow some of the top off that. I would say Candace Matthews-Brackeen in Cincinnati of Lightship Capital is another one who's been doing a lot of work around like raising funds and bringing awareness to the fact that like Black women who are in the VC space are having just as difficult a time getting funding as those who are launching funds are to raise those funds. And like
it always comes from somewhere.
Exactly. We have to stop the cycle if we want to say we are going to invest. And like that is a key way in which people can invest in Black and Black owned businesses and sort of see that there's an economic impact and know that there's going to be an economic impact from that engagement.
And I think kind of the power of data and analytics can expose a lot of those opportunities if people are really looking at even statistically the power behind some of these opportunities.
Oh, absolutely. I think it would be alarmingly interesting to like do like a much more thorough scan of the VC space and try and get, the angel investors in there to get some of those. There's now, I think in Cleveland, but also I want to say maybe it's like an African tradition where it's like community investment groups essentially. And so there's a lot of those kind of groups that are popping up. So there is this call to try and democratize investment and really sort of get beyond the hurdles of like, what does it mean and how you do it? Because that is the challenge for a lot of people of color and just generally like women as well. Like, I don't know a lot about money. I don't know a lot about the numbers. Like, I can't get involved. And, you got to get over that hurdle, like, yourself. Like, that's your issue where you can be like, I can own that and I can educate myself. And then I can figure out, like, how I can intervene.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the democratization of just the knowledge is one of the key components.
Absolutely. And now if you can take like classes from Harvard and MIT and whatever, like there's no reason why you can't access the knowledge, the information at the highest, most like rigorous levels that it's presented out there and like know what you need to know to get where you need to go in that regard.
So you mentioned having experience in the VC world, in the startup world. How did you get into that? What led you to that path?
Startup space. So a long time ago, very long ago, Reagan, when I was deciding that being a college professor wasn't as glamorous as it sounded, I was like, okay, what am I going to do next? Like, I literally have gone to college my whole entire life. Like, I literally went from like undergrad to graduate school, master's to PhD, then to college professorship. So my work experience was pretty minimal in terms of beyond like teaching and working as a barista, but I can make a darn good coffee latte drink. Yes. And so I decided like I would tell anybody, you know, get an internship, find a volunteer opportunity, like find some way to, you know, get some experience. And so that's what I did out at the Dublin Entrepreneurial Center.
Oh, cool. I love that place.
I was there the first year that it opened, like literally started a couple months after it, you know, opened as one of the first like public-private partnerships, which have to give a shout out to Ohio because we literally innovated what the hell a public-private partnership is.
It's true, and you would know because you've been
I've been in economic development.
Yeah.
So that's really where I got introduced to it. And I literally never took like an economics class or even a poli-sci class. So I was just like, what the fuck is happening? Like, what does a city manager do? Like, that sounds fishy. I'm like, that doesn't even sound like a real job.
It's a fake job.
It sounded real fake. It sounded really fake. But that's where I really got into it. And I found, you know, two things with the startup founders. Number one, if you have an idea and you're willing to put a sweat equity behind it, they will take you. So you don't have to know everything. And startup people and entrepreneurs are always really open to the fact that they don't know everything, and they need to surround themselves with people who do know the other things. And then number two, if you have any stamina to write more than one sentence in a row, that you can you can get a job at least as a writer in the startup space, because entrepreneurs have no level of attention span outside of things that are very interesting to them. And so writing is a sustained attention engagement activity. And I found a lot of people just like, I don't have time to do it. I don't have time. And so I was like, well, I can write stuff. You can just talk and I'll just write. And we'll just do it like that. So that's how I and then just kept networking and knowing people, and, you know, coming back to the people that always were around and cool, like your Lisa Chambers and Tony Cunningham's and John Bishop. E.P.I.C Martini was like my jam for a number of years. Like, I used to write feedback posts for them on their events, and love the E.P.I.C Martini days.
That's awesome.
We miss you, John and Aladdin.
Yeah, so you found yourself in this kind of startup ecosystem doing a lot of writing, and I can relate to you because I've done a bit of product marketing and writing myself. And you're right. I mean, you've got messaging is probably one of the most key aspects early on. You have to tell people what problem you're trying to solve.
Absolutely.
So is that how you got into the branding and marketing aspect of things? Like, what I know your background is in that as well, but how did you kind of blend those two things together to move kind of in that direction?
Well, my undergraduate degree is in public relations. So I learned a lot in that process at Western Michigan University. And I did a couple internships in PR and just always loved it in general. And then my graduate degree is in rhetorical and media communication. So spent a good deal of time, you know, reviewing media, looking at it, thinking about what are the messages that this media artifact, this commercial, this song, this television program, like, what are the messages that they're sending out there? What are the narratives that those messages rely on, so that they can put them out there and not have to connect all the dots, because you've got the narratives, you've learned to connect the dots and to make meaning of that message. So that's always been my passion in doing it in and around like media. And then while I was at Denison, I started teaching courses with Facebook. I was ahead of my time. So I started using Facebook in my classroom like right away. I started using blogging in my classroom as a form of public speech, and started teaching students how to actually present themselves online, how to create LinkedIn profiles, like, you know, how to do that. So it seemed really natural. And once I figured out social media is like the trick is to figure out how to get people to engage with you. And I had studied audiences. So it was interesting to, just like a little experimental nerd, like sitting on Facebook, like typing out things and being like, how inflammatory is that? Like, do you think people will respond? Okay, edit. Okay, that's too much. Okay,
I love it.
Yeah, so I did. I like just experimented a lot with it and like studying different channels, like
it's a psychology.
It is like now it's very well known, like you post this kind of content on LinkedIn, this kind of content on Facebook, and it even is like so blurred because there's so little distinction between the channels now. But 10 years ago, 8 years ago, there was a lot more distinction between the channels, and it was a very like rigid around like that shit's more for LinkedIn or nobody's interested in that on Twitter, like so that's how I really kind of like got involved in that side of the technology space. And then the woman that I worked with, Sandy Blankera, out at the Dublin Entrepreneurial Center, because it was very tech focused and everything at the time was really investing in tech, just around a lot of tech companies and just around a lot of tech entrepreneurs. And I remember sitting in my first my first workshop, like after I started there. And since I was like interning, I could always like go to all of the events free of cost. And the dude, Bill Sturzenbach, who is the former founder of Upward Interactions or Upward Brands, I believe it's called now. And he was saying how he used to work at Google. And I was like, wow, people in Ohio used to work at Google. Like, that's exciting. Number one. It's really exciting. And then number two, he kept saying SEO, SEO, SEO. And I was like, what the fuck is he saying? Ezo? I was like, what is that? And then somebody's like, no, SEO. I was like, well, what the fuck is that? Like, what is that? And so I just remember being like blown away. And it was just a whole new way of understanding technology for me. It wasn't the coding. It wasn't like backslashes and like carrots and shit that I really couldn't like wrap my mind around. But it was this like the interconnection of the web and how it's connected. Yeah. And that was really exciting for me. So that's sort of what jump started like moving into more of a content marketing space, because you do a lot more of that linking and connecting and finding ways to, drive your SEO through other people's platforms and other websites, and how you're, doing your keywords and figuring out, the long tail from the short tail and all of that. So that's sort of how I really kind of like just dove in and said, I'm going to be all in on the tech space. And no one would believe me. They're like, no, you're a writer, you're a marketer, you're not in technology. So it is very exciting.
They are hand in hand now.
They are.
I mean, you have to be. So you're right. You were ahead of your time. They're hand in hand. You can't really have one without the other.
Yeah, now it's like now the idea of being a creative technologist is like people are like, oh, okay, well, you do the creative side of the technology stuff. You probably do the more UX stuff. You might engage, and which I enjoy. Like, I love to like talk to people and hear them talk about the media that they're engaging, and then to take that information and translate it into a like real actionable insight for the development team. And like, that's a very specialized like skill, because you have to give people the space to speak, but prompt them to speak through that process, and then to take what they have said, which can sometimes feel like nonsense, and put it into an actionable like task item that your development team can act on. So you've got to know enough about all of those things to be able to kind of do that work really well. So that's kind of where I feel like my nexus is being able to hear people and let them talk, understand what they say, and translate it to whoever it is that needs to know it to do something with it.
Yeah, that is a no joke process. I mean, even just having consistency across all of that as well, you can get so caught up in a silo in any one of those categories. I mean, even just like, we're going to focus on our SEO, but that's so incredibly important to weave into your website and to weave into the articles you're writing, and just having the understanding of that. Like, what is technology even capable of doing, and how do you make sure you're not missing out on that opportunity from a content perspective? I mean, That's
and
extremely
content is everything. Like,
Yeah.
content is king. Like, we have not been saying that for the last like 5-7 years for no reason.
Right.
And I do think like now people are, understanding it more. And again, just in understanding how the internet works. It's not like this mystery,
Right.
like you can pull back the veil and like see how the system works and like what are the levers and pulleys. But I was fired from one job because the guy was like, well, you've been working on SEO for like 6 months and I haven't seen any real like big increases in our website. So I'm going to take away your budget and we're going to go. And I was like, what? Dude, I was like, number one, you don't even have like an optimized website of any variety. You're not producing any original content on like any frequency. I was like, you don't even have your phone number on your website for outreach. I was like, you don't have a contact. I was like, we just got started.
Oh, I've had so many of these conversations too. When I first launched Women in Analytics, we did paid social for the first time last year. We operated off of word of mouth for 2 years.
Wow. Because you guys had like conference attendees. It wasn't like you had like
we hit 750 people by word of mouth and organic
That's
social,
amazing.
Which was mind-blowing to me. I know. But we were like, okay, we got to step our game up and do some paid social. And let me tell you, it is a whole experiment. I mean, that can take a year to even get your baseline.
Right.
And so I don't think people understand the long game of marketing enough.
Not at all.
Especially the tangible value that branding and doing it right has for you.
Absolutely. And the comprehensiveness of it, because a lot of people are coming to a space where they recognize, okay, marketing is sort of like cross-organizational. Mm-hmm. It does include, copy and design and web and digital and social. And they're getting that part of it, but they're still not understanding like how it's so integrated across all of those things.
Right.
And if you don't have a strategy that takes into consideration all of those areas, and we'll say all of those disciplines, and then all of the channels that you at least elect to use in and around those disciplines, and then thinking more specifically about what is the audience that you want to engage that are on those channels, then you're really doing yourself a disservice if you're not really thinking strategically and in an integrated manner. And that's where having a strong sense of like what the brand is, what the brand voice is, what are our pillars of, communication, like what are our values, what are the topics that we're talking about on a consistent basis, how are we elevating thought leadership, how are we demonstrating ourselves as leaders in our brand, in our industry, in our space, and like putting that out there as well. Like it's much bigger than just let's get some ads or let's do some social media, or, it's much bigger and much more complex. As you said, like people don't know the long game, and if you do it, like the long game can really pay the dividends, but you have to do it and iterate and do it and iterate some more.
Absolutely. And, I would just like to emphasize too, I think over the last 2-3 months, companies are starting to feel the negative effects of not having that strategy in place. Mm-hmm. They're scrambling. We got to get this messaging together.
Yes.
We got to act like this is what we're about. You know what I mean? And there's just kind of this very clear lack of identity. Mm-hmm. And they're feeling the effects of not having that.
Absolutely. And they're also feeling the effects of sort of operating in silos and not having diverse voices at the table.
Absolutely.
Right. And so I can remember really clearly when I worked at McGraw-Hill. It was during the time when McGraw-Hill and a lot of states were coming out with their standardized education standards. Yes. And so Texas, of course, had their own standards for educational content and material. And they had somehow been able to request and successfully get the word slavery removed from their textbooks. And in exchange, it was referred to as indentured servitude. And so you can only imagine the other kinds of historical revisionism that Texas had requested for their textbooks. And so it then came out, like after those textbooks were released, a PhD student in Texas who was of color was like scrolling through her kid's 5th grade history book, realized that all of the references to slavery were now indentured servitude. And it was positioned as though people had a choice as to whether or not they were indentured servants, which is so historically inaccurate, just even on the indentured servitude perspective. Like, indentured servitude doesn't mean voluntary.
Oh my God.
It actually doesn't. So this comes out on Facebook. People are, appalled. They're like, oh my God, I can't believe this. Like, McGraw-Hill, blah, blah, blah. We thought you were better than this. And they do have like a very like large academic component, and they have people who go through the process of like updating the textbooks and whatever. So it's a very like multi-layered review process. So you do have to ask yourself the question, like, among all of the review layers, no one said,
not a single person
yeah, read through any of that material and said, we're removing slavery out of the historical past of the state of Texas and the United States, as though it wasn't a epoch in our history. Maybe we shouldn't do that. Nobody said that. So,
or they couldn't, or if they did read it, they didn't feel empowered to be able to change it.
But right, or bring it to someone, or if they, or you know what, I don't know. Somebody could have brought it up, and somebody could have been shut down.
Totally.
That's all. Like, any of those scenarios are possible. So this is all happening, and I had worked in the internal agency, which worked on the national campaigns, and so I heard about this, and they were trying to like figure out what their feedback was going to be to their internal, because it's a global organization, so they've got people all over the world. And I just like sent a message first to my manager and then to the SVP of marketing, and I was just like, hey, by the way, I've got like a degree in like some of this information, and so if you need somebody to like review some of this content and just kind of give you that lens of, it does this actually fit with what we're trying to say, please, feel free to reach out to me. Like, I want to make sure I make myself available. And sure as shit, they like reached out to me, and that was great. Wow. So I was like working directly with like the SVP and then the folks in New York to kind of put this global message together for the internal employees. But at the end of the day, that SVP said that I wasn't respectful enough to her. And therefore I could not be promoted without going through a 6-month training program under a white man to teach me how to be more respectful of her at the job.
Oh my God.
So, even in the best of circumstances where you have really like amplified like what you're bringing to the table, you still get shot down, And so that was just an instance where I can't get past that, like I don't know how to get over that, where you're telling me all of the things that I've done for the job have been amazing. I've trained people. I've created like programs. I've like created infrastructure around like how we actually write and document as a marketing department here. Like, I've done that such that it's been filtered across the organization. I've basically created what it means to be a copywriter and the copywriting process as it works with the client and the designer. And you're telling me because you feel like I'm not respectful enough, which feels like,
what does that even mean?
That's coded language for you act like you know more than what you know, and we don't feel like you know your place. So we're going to give you 6 months to demonstrate to us, studying under this white man, to show us that you know what your place would be. And if it's good enough, then we'll promote you.
It gives me, these types of, stories give me so much, I don't know, it's discouraging, because you start to see how deep rooted these cultural issues are. Because it's not even like on the high level of, oh shit, we should probably not change specific words in our actual history books. But now it's a level deeper. And I feel like you just keep peeling back the layers until you start exposing those pieces. I mean, this is why kind of the branding thing, even though as people are talking about this in such an abstract sense, it's not.
It's not. It's really not. Like, I mean, you know, there's a lot of people out there asking questions where you're like, you know, you see a company saying like Black Lives Matter. And it's so interesting. Do you know Tanisha Robinson, founder of CBD something, formerly the first CEO of North American Brewdog, Black woman,
oh, yes.
Ticket Fire.
Yes.
So she's awesome. Hey, shout out Tanisha. And, you know, she said somebody challenged her on LinkedIn or Instagram to say like, what is she doing to combat racism? And I was like, well, obviously, number one, you don't even know her because she is a Black lesbian woman living in Central Ohio.
As a CEO of a business, she's like living it.
Right. She's a serial entrepreneur. I was like, she's so badass. Brewdog was an investor of her new beverage company. So, and her new beverage company is a CBD company. So she's already working to eradicate like the stigmatisms around CBD. She's already worked in a male-dominated like beverage industry space and been successful such that she was able to move herself out of CEO to the role of chief disruption officer, which just means I look around probably for like cool shit that we should invest in.
Yeah.
And then launch her second, third, fourth business as a Black woman who hires and employs individual. I was just like, you know what? Like, we need to also like be really conscious about who we're challenging, because you might not be challenging the right folks just because you're not aware of what they're doing. But there is something to be said about like, we're going to come up with a statement of Black Lives Matter and we're going to put a black dot on our website for the day. And we're going to make sure that, you know, we have a something that says like we support, you know, stand with the Black community. Like some folks, I'm like, I'm not going to mention anybody locally, but there's a couple of organizations.
But you can tell when those were created and turned over in a day.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I mean,
and you know what?
Point.
There is I hate to blow the bubble, but there is a list of organizations, I promise you, like in your community where people of color and women have said, I wouldn't work there. I wouldn't work there. And I have certainly had people reach out to me and be like, yo, I saw you worked at X, Y, and Z organization. Like, can we have just a brief convo? I'll be like, we sure can. It'll be off the record. But know that there's a list, and your thinly veiled attempts with black dots and support messages at the 11th hour and no action behind them are seen through. And like, I think we're so media savvy about it. People aren't even pretending to be fooled about it.
I was going to say, people aren't even acting fooled.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I mean, I love the posts that I've been seeing, which is like, post a picture of your board and your executive team.
I know, right? They're like, let's see your leadership team. You stand with Black Lives Matter. Let's see that leadership team. What? No? Huh? What? No? Huh?
Right. Well, what do you, as somebody who has, significant experience in branding, how do you where do you go from here as a company to like make these significant changes? I mean, you've got to really uproot your culture.
Well, I think it depends, like every company's culture is not going to go through the same process or experiences. But of course, the first starts with looking at your organization, looking at the leadership, and looking at your policies and thinking about like, what are we saying? Excuse me. And then looking at your values and being like, are we really living that? And then I would say like, try and find a third party that can help you then have conversations with your leadership, with your organization, with people at all levels of the organization. Because I think people, when they love to like think about, what's the organization doing and what's our next strategy and where are we going to go from here, they speak to the same people and they speak to the leadership team. And it's not to say that the leadership team doesn't have some insights or some great perspective. But one of the things I really respect about, say, Worthington Industries is that they're really focused on like ideas come from all areas of the organization. Innovation comes from every area of the organization. They have very like strong, dedicated internal initiatives that help people incubate their ideas to bring them to fruition, that have resulted in like massive project or product innovations. And so, you know, the lesson there is like, don't think that the only people that hold valuable knowledge about your information reside at the top.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, you know, and I say use a third party so that you can get out of your own way. You know, you don't have to feel attacked. You're not running a focus group. You're not getting the survey results. Like try and take the emotion out of it and think about it very, you know, systemically and institutionally and organizationally and culturally, and not from an emotion-ridden place where this is an attack about me. Because from a branding perspective, you know, every company, small or large or what have you, like people who have been there for a while or the founder, you know, you internalize the brand and you feel as though it is a representation of yourself. And in many ways, you've created it to be so. Yeah. But it's not. And that there is a dividing line. And that also gives you an opportunity to then investigate the own things about yourself using those, you know, touch points that may be happening by a third party. But I definitely say bring in a third party, do the reflection, try and get the emotion out of it to really assess like where you're at and what you're doing to then develop an action plan.
Yeah, I think that's excellent advice. It's hard to reflect on yourself of things that you've built. And sustain without bias of yourself. Right. Oh, that can't possibly be leading to...
Right. Well, if I didn't do that, then X, Y, and Z wouldn't have happened.
Exactly. Right. Yep. Absolutely. So I think that's really excellent advice.
That's always been my challenge with branding small businesses is the business owner is like so close to the brand. Yeah. They're like very like upset when you want to change it a little bit.
So. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's hard to disassociate yourself from that sometimes. I think you're dead on. I think people do take it as a personal attack. So if people want to learn more about what you're doing and what you're building, where can they find you?
They can't find me. I'm actually a ghost and I'm not visible on the internet. No. You can find me at Erika, Erika, at coolcreativedesign.com. That's probably the best way to reach me is by email or on LinkedIn. I'm always on LinkedIn. And then Instagram, I do play on the IG every once in a while at epicerica.com. I just had that video of the kid doing the reenactment of the Very Hungry Caterpillar. So she's actually my Instagram star. So only go on Instagram if you're not. Director. She is. She's my content director. She's my boss. She's my protege as well, but boss is probably her most fun position to occupy.
And you've got the career network too that you've just launched as well.
Yes, the Epic Career Network. But the best place to find that is also on LinkedIn. Okay. So definitely reach out there. I'm, on there and active, and we have a very cool website. We do office hours every week. We do monthly events. So this month we're talking about career pivots. We've got a really cool panel at the end of the month on the 25th, I believe, and then. Of 25th of June. Yes. Thank you. And then we are also doing like member profile interviews. So just did a couple interviews that we're excited to drop in the next couple weeks. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's very fun.
Well, thank you so much for being on and coming out of your house during
Thank you for letting me come out of my house during COVID. I feel so special.
Seriously, this was such a joy. I love touching base with you every time I get to hang out with you.
I know.
It's so much fun.
And and it's very exciting because I don't know if you know or not, you were literally my first client for Epic Creative and Design. So you hold like a little spot in my heart. Right. And I was like, it's really, just very gratifying because I would not have met you if I had not joined WITI, Women in Technology International, and I was like so honored to be asked to be a part of that. And then I met you at our first and only event of 2020.
Thus far. Well, in person at least.
In person event, and to be working with the founder of Women in Analytics, and like when you're like, okay, yes, I've got like a staff and we're doing this, I'm like, oh, it's a powerhouse bitch. I'm like, okay, well, I've got a staff too. Get over here, Abigail.
Kill me.
I was like, I have an office. Like, somebody get out of here. I'm trying to project a big business image right now. You're in your underwear. It's not working. So, so thank you for being my first client and just really helping give me the confidence to just be like, yeah, I know what the fuck I'm doing here.
I love working with brilliant people like you, honestly.
You're a joy to work with. You're so easy. You basically are like, listen, we got 3 weeks to get this bitch off the ground. So I'm going to need something and I'm going to need it fast.
Yeah, it was great though. Came in clutch. So... It was awesome.
Well, good. Well, thank you so much for having me. It has been a pleasure and delight.
Oh, thank you. And cheers again.
Cheers.
Oh, these were great.
These were great.
They have great taste.
What's the bartender's name? Derek?
Derek shouted.
Yes, I like him. He's a good guy.
He is. Thanks for tuning in this week on the In Your Business podcast. And thank you again, Erika, for being such an amazing first guest on the show. I also want to thank Beth. She's incredible and the studio is amazing. Thanks again to Derek, who makes these incredible drinks for our guests. And we will see you next week for the next episode of the In Your Business podcast. Every episode, Derek, our mixologist, crafts a unique drink for our guest. Stick around to find out how to make it.
All right, what's going on, guys? I am Derek Reno. I am the founder and creative director for the Reno Reserve and for Echo Spirits. And for this volume of the In Your Business podcast with Reagan, we have a guest whose name is Erika Pryor, whose bio, when I was creating this cocktail, I'm not gonna lie, was the most fun and the coolest one that I've had yet. Erika Pryor is the founder of E.P.I.C Creative and Design. E.P.I.C, we just found out, happens to stand for Erika Pryor is in charge. Erika also, in one of the references on the bio, listed that she has a purple aura, which I couldn't wait to find out about today. So what we're going to create today is a cocktail that I have titled the E.P.I.C Purple Aura, a very specific cocktail to Erika and to all of her answers and to all of the kind of inspiration and vibe I've picked up putting this together. So we're gonna go back into tequila, one of Erika's favorite spirits. We're gonna do a house-made Créme de Violette liqueur. Anyone at home that's interested in this, there are other brands of Créme de Violette liqueurs out there, which is just a violet liqueur from the violet flower. And we're gonna use Montenegro, which is an Italian Amaro made from over 40 botanicals that I just thought kind of lived up to the swag that Erika had as I was reading her bio. This spirit was once upon a time made by what is usually described as a rebel from Italy for a princess of Montenegro who later became the queen. And I'm quite certain that this would fit very well for Erika and all she's got going on. So the cocktail itself, we're gonna go ahead and put together, is a full 2 ounces of our old friend from Espolon. This is the Blanco Tequila. You could also use a Reposado or Añejo if you want a little more backbone to this. This, if you can see here, this purple is the Créme de Violette liqueur that we made just for today. You'll see a lot more purple when this cocktail comes together and is finished. And then just a touch of this Montenegro. Montenegro has a lot of flavors. It is bitter like an Amaro, but it also has an almost juicy fruit kind of finish to it, like juicy fruit, the gum. It's probably my favorite Amaro in the world right now. And then we're gonna do lime, fresh pressed lime from today, at also a ½ ounce. And another touch of sugar right here. This is just some simple syrup at a ½ ounce. And just to kind of top off this floral aspect, these are Lavender Bitters here. There's a couple brands out you can get. We made this just for Erika today. This cocktail will also be shaken. And we're gonna leave a little bit of room. Give this just a little bit of bubbles here. And then we're gonna finish this off with some E.P.I.C purple accoutrement here. This is actually a delicious brand of purple kale. that I can't believe I found just in time for this shoot. And the Epic Purple Aura for Miss Erika Pryor right here.